Ever since some crypto, maybe Bitcoin, and been watching for it to confirm, only to find the transaction ID seemed, well, weird. Like it changed after you sent it.
Ah, yeah. If you've run into that kind of confusion, you've bumped into something called transaction malleability. It sounds complex, but it caused some real issues back in the day.
Right. So for this shallow dive today, we're aiming to break that down for you.
That's that.
Just explain what it was, why it was a big deal, and importantly, how it got fixed.
Exactly. Just the essentials.
Okay, let's start basic.
Yeah.
Every crypto transaction has a unique identifier, right? Like a digital fingerprint. We call it a TXID, transaction ID.
Yep, that's the idea. It's meant to be this unique tracker for that specific transaction. Now, transaction malleability was a characteristic, a vulnerability, really.
Okay.
It meant someone could slightly change that TXID after you broadcast the transaction,
Yeah.
but before it got locked into the blockchain, before it was
Hold
confirmed.
on, change the ID, but without changing the important stuff, like who sent the money, who got it, the amount. That seems odd.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was precisely the problem. The digital signature, the thing that proves the transaction is valid, it covered the essential data sender receiver amount.
Mm-hmm.
But the way the TXID itself was calculated, it actually included some other less critical pieces of data, bits related to the signature structure itself.
Ah, okay.
And those bits could sometimes be altered, slightly tweaked, without breaking the signature's validity. Change those bits, and you get a different TXID calculation for the exact same core transaction.
Right, okay. But if the money still ends up in the right wallet, does a changing ID really matter that much? Seems like a technical footnote.
Well, that's where it got messy. For a person just watching their wallet, maybe not immediately obvious, but for systems, especially automated ones like exchanges, it was a huge deal.
How so?
Think about an exchange waiting for your deposit. Their system logs the original TXID you initiated. It watches the network for that specific ID to confirm.
Okay.
But if someone malleated the transaction and a different TXID got confirmed on the blockchain,
Then the exchange's system, looking for the old ID, would never see it confirm. It'd think the transaction had failed or just never happened.
exactly, total confusion. This could cause simple delays, which is annoying enough, but worse in some, let's say, less robust systems.
Oh.
It could trick the system into thinking the transaction genuinely failed,
Yeah.
potentially leading to, say, credit the funds again or resend a withdrawal. Double spending, essentially, facilitated by this ID change.
And this isn't theoretical. This leads us straight to the Mt. Gox disaster in 2014, doesn't it?
The most infamous example, absolutely. Mt. Gox was the biggest Bitcoin exchange back then. They publicly claimed that transaction malleability attacks were a major reason for their collapse.
What was their claim exactly?
They said attackers were malleating withdrawal transactions. Their system, tracking by the original TXID, would see the withdrawal apparently fail because the ID changed.
So the system thought the Bitcoin never left.
Right. And according to Gox, this led their system to mistakenly resend withdrawals or recredit accounts, contributing massively to the, staggering loss they reported.
Which was, what, over 850,000 Bitcoins? Worth nearly $500 million at the time?
Yeah.
Wow. A technical glitch causing that level of chaos.
It definitely highlights the potential impact. Now, it's important to add a bit of nuance here. Independent researchers looked at the blockchain data before Gox collapsed. They found evidence of malleability attacks, yes, especially after the issue became public knowledge. But the volume of funds involved in those detected attacks seemed much, much smaller than the total amount Gox claimed to have lost because of malleability.
So it happened, it was a real vulnerability they likely suffered from, but maybe not the sole reason for the entire 850,000 Bitcoin hole. More going on, perhaps?
That's what the research suggests. The narrative might be more complex than just malleability killed Gox, even though it was definitely a contributing factor and a serious problem.
Okay, that makes sense. So given this vulnerability, how did the network eventually, fix it?
The main solution came with a major Bitcoin protocol upgrade in 2017 called Segregated Witness, or SegWit for short.
Segregated witness. Segregated, like separated.
Exactly. That's the key idea in relation to malleability. SegWit changed the structure of transactions. It separated the signature data, which they call the witness data. It moved that data away from the main part of the transaction data that's used to calculate the primary TXID.
Ah, I see it. So if the signature data, the part that could be potentially fiddled with to change the ID, if that's no longer part of the ID calculation.
Then messing with the signature can't change the main TXID anymore, at least for transactions using this new SegWit format. It effectively neutralized that specific vector for malleability. Problem solved for SegWit transactions.
Clever. And fixing this wasn't just about security, right? Didn't it have other benefits?
Absolutely. Big ones, actually. Signatures take up a fair bit of space. By moving the witness data outside the main block data counted towards the traditional block size limit.
You could fit more transactions into a block, effectively. Better scalability.
Yep. It was a neat way to increase capacity without just raising the raw block size limit immediately. And critically, fixing malleability was basically a prerequisite for other important technologies.
Like the Lightning Network.
Exactly like the Lightning Network.
Yeah.
Layer 2 solutions like Lightning rely heavily on being able to definitively reference specific, unchanging transaction IDs. Malleability made that unsafe. SegWit fixed it, paving the way.
So, wrapping this up for you listening, transaction malleability was a genuine, significant technical flaw in early Bitcoin.
It had real consequences, with Mt. Gox being the most cited, though perhaps complex, example of its potential damage.
But the good news is a major upgrade, SegWit, was developed and implemented specifically to address it for newer transactions.
And it worked, largely eliminating that specific problem while also bringing benefits like better capacity and enabling future innovations like Lightning.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, how these seemingly small technical details deep in the code can have such massive real-world effects and drive so much ongoing development. Maybe something to ponder is that difference between the scale of the Mt. Gox loss and what researchers could attribute directly to malleability beforehand. Food for thought.